International pressure on Nicolas Maduro is increasing with a letter from former Latin American leaders to Biden demanding action against the Venezuelan president. The OAS, or Organization of American States, is also calling for Nicolas Maduro to take action, expressing dissatisfaction with the Brazilian stance and claiming that they expected Brazil to take a different position. Despite this great international pressure, there are two countries that could have a significant impact on the scale for Nicolas Maduro. Meanwhile, we have important revelations from the United States claiming that an attack by Iran on Israel would have catastrophic consequences. Apparently, due to the military deployment, this is not just talk, it seems to be quite serious. Meanwhile, Ukraine is consolidating its position in Kursk, having destroyed an important bridge that was crucial both socially and from a military perspective. The region invaded by the Ukrainians is another major concern. There is a nuclear risk both in Zaporizhia and in the Kursk plant, and the National Atomic Energy Agency is already showing great concern. Will Ukraine really attack these nuclear plants? If you want to understand more about these issues and much more about geography, geopolitics, current affairs, politics, and controversies, subscribe to the channel and leave your like. The pressure on Nicolas Maduro is enormous, especially because the three main mediators in Latin America between Maduro and the international community are growing weary of the situation. Mexico, under López Obrador, has even abandoned negotiations, claiming that there is not much more to discuss until Venezuela presents its electoral records. Meanwhile, Colombia under Gustavo Petro and Brazil under Lula are starting to make controversial statements, asserting that Venezuela indeed owes explanations to the international community. I mentioned earlier that Maduro, through intermediaries, is claiming that he did not expect this position from Brazil, and that Brazil has been sharing on social media that there is greater pressure for him to present the records than anticipated. What do you think about this? In my opinion, Lula's statements suggest he wants to consolidate his leadership, not only in Latin America but also as a global leader. Consolidating his role as an intermediary in Latin America would be essential. That's why he often, even in a more colloquial language, overlooks Daniel Ortega's actions and has tried to maintain a neutral position on Nicolas Maduro's actions. In the case of Nicaragua, the diplomatic relations have already broken down. Now, with Venezuela, the situation is approaching a similar crisis. Lula has stated that he does not recognize Maduro as the president of Venezuela and is awaiting the presentation of the electoral records. He even proposed new elections and a coalition government, citing Brazil as an example of how to manage polarization. According to Lula, Brazil has achieved a very polarized scenario, so when he took office, he had to please the opposition by appointing some more right-wing conservative and liberal ministers. In my view, the polarization in Venezuela is more about legal disputes and serious concerns about electoral fraud rather than political polarization. Therefore, a coalition government between Corina Machado or Edmundo Gonzalez and Maduro seems unlikely. Both sides have rejected proposals, with Venezuela accusing the opposition of foreign interventionism. For instance, when Bolsonaro claimed electoral fraud in Brazil, no new election was held. There were also discussions about the Colombian peace agreement, with Venezuela as the mediator, and how Venezuela should not give advice on managing the issue in Colombia. Maria Corina Machado stated that the will of the people must be respected, and if Nicolas Maduro does not accept the results, they will hold subsequent elections until he accepts the results. Apparently, neither side has accepted the proposal. Nicolas Maduro is relying on military support to remain in power, and we will have to see how the situation unfolds. China and Russia are significant allies of Venezuela. They have recognized Nicolas Maduro as president, and Venezuela is expected to participate in the upcoming BRICS meeting and may join the organization. Despite Brazil's non-recognition of Maduro, Venezuela could still become a member. The BRICS situation is complex, but the pressure from former leaders, mainly from the right, Álvaro Uribe from Colombia, Guillermo Lasso from Ecuador, and Mauricio Macri from Argentina, has led them to send a letter to Lula demanding that he pressure Maduro's government for transparency and a return to democracy. Lula did not respond to the letter, and now they have sent another letter to Joe Biden, the President of the United States, given that Biden had previously expressed support for new elections in Venezuela. The United States, alongside the European Union and 21 other countries, including Uruguay and Argentina, has signed a document demanding transparency and the presentation of electoral records. For those who don't know, electoral records are similar to our ballot boxes in Brazilian elections, which are widely inspected by opposition parties and civil society. The OAS has called for the presentation of these records for independent verification of votes. If Venezuela does not comply with the OAS's decision, it will remain outside the OAS since 2019 due to the non-recognition of the last elections. Perhaps you remember that Juan Guaido declared himself president of Venezuela, but this was not accepted by Nicolas Maduro and his allies. Since then, Venezuela has not been part of the OAS. Even if the United States and the West impose sanctions, there may not be much that can be done. The question remains whether Venezuela will lose support from its Latin American partners, such as Brazil. This is still uncertain, but not all countries are against Nicolas Maduro. Russia, for example, has invited Maduro to the BRICS meeting and is expected to accept Venezuela into the organization. Russia has also conducted military exercises in Cuba and Venezuela, and the proximity between Venezuela and Russia has increased in recent years. China has also been involved. Recently, Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez met with the Chinese ambassador in Caracas to establish a cooperation agreement to strengthen a multipolar world. This agreement included discussions on overcoming economic blockades and sanctions imposed by the United States. On September 9, 2023, Nicolas Maduro was in China to establish more than 30 trade agreements. This year, China and Venezuela will celebrate 50 years of diplomatic recognition. I believe Nicolas Maduro would like the support of Latin American countries, but if electoral fraud is proven, he might not present the records and could risk breaking relations with Latin America for a strong partnership with China and Russia. Meanwhile, Iran has stated that its response will be an intelligence attack, possibly due to a recent meeting with Putin, who demanded geopolitical support in exchange for equipment. China has also declared support for Iran, claiming that Israel's actions against Iranian territory were an infringement of Iranian sovereignty. Russia, while having a closer military relationship with Iran, has demanded that no civilians be harmed. From the statements of Iranian leaders, it appears that the attack will be intelligence-based. We do not know if it will target a military facility or an important figure opposed to Iranians or Palestinians. Iran's response is unclear, but it will be significant. The United States is deploying the largest military contingent since 1991, including the nuclear submarine USS Georgia and the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln. The deployment of these assets suggests that the U.S. believes Iran will face catastrophic consequences if it attacks Israel. Israel also has support from France and the United Kingdom. This might be why Iran has not yet attacked or is waiting for a ceasefire agreement in the Gaza Strip. We are also seeing a psychological aspect to this situation, given the current hot Israeli summer. If I were Israeli, I would be uncomfortable knowing that Iran might attack at any moment. Finally, Ukraine continues using Western equipment in its incursion into Kursk. Russia has reported that Ukraine's attack destroyed a crucial bridge for military and ammunition movement. The size of Kursk is approximately 1,000 kilometers, similar to Rio de Janeiro. Russia has accused the West of financing Ukraine's actions, bringing the world closer to a third world war. Russia is also considering the possibility of Ukraine preparing an attack with dirty bombs, given the recent incidents at Zaporizhia. Make the background music documentary.